Welcome everyone to the Chia Mainnet fourth anniversary celebration stream. I want to thank everyone who's joining us for being here. I also want to thank Gene Hoffman for joining me as well to host this very special event. Hi, Gene.
Hi, great to see you, Ryan.
So what we're going to do today is we have a state of the chain address from Gene. He's going to start that shortly. We also will have some Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please feel free to add them to the Zoom Q&A. You can also post them in the YouTube chat or in our Discord. We have a Q&A channel there as well. We will be monitoring all of those. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session and we'll be able to answer some of your questions. Um, but without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Gene, who's going to give us a few updates about what's been going on over the last year and what's looking forward to the future.
Thank you, Ryan. So it has now been 4 years and a day since the Chia blockchain mainnet launch, and it has been a wild 4 years. Not all of that wild has been good. Some of it has been 2 years of stalled things because of malfeasance and crime and all sorts of ugly and unfun things. But on the flip side of that, it has been 4 years of building. And we are now at a precipice. I consider this year to be a very pivotal and transitionary year for the Chia blockchain. So, in the past years, we have built what is now the most functional and user-friendly blockchain ever. We're going to be able to be the most secure, the most decentralized, and the easiest one for normal humans to actually store real money and real things on. We're really excited about the rollout of vaults and Cloud Wallet. I think self-custody at a whole new level is going to have major impacts. And obviously, if you're following along, first on Wall Street, but then later on the things like corporate sign-in and supply chain management. I think it's going to be a really powerful thing to be able to finally have the level of security that has been really unavailable to almost everyone be something that everyone has in their pocket based on their mobile phone. The other thing that's been very important is, we've always been about making blockchains actually useful for real people in the real world. And, we were off to a very good start with the World Bank and the CAD Trust, and now almost all carbon offsets since inception to present are listed on the Chia blockchain. Only a few currently are trading, but we expect that to expand. But that use case, a very real use case, a use case almost no other projects have, is in production with multiple countries and multiple governments running a real application they care about. So when we talked to people and said, we believe that the Chia blockchain is going to be the chosen blockchain for the highest security, the most valuable transactions, and commerce in general, the internet of markets, it's actually going to be one market. The one pushback we got was, okay, we see the World Bank, we see that you're a decentralized entity, but, what's that high scale application? What's that proof point that proves that it's not all dank meme coins that go to zero, or the casino that only takes the yield out of you and not out of actual yielding opportunities. And so we're extremely excited what we're doing with the Permuto trusts, coming together with former Credit Suisse guys and really reimagining what it means to invest. And I think it's important to back up and talk about how big what we're doing with Permuto is. It is the first new financial asset classes. It's two asset classes since the ETF in 1993. And it is going to change how people invest in large companies, period. It means that people will be able to really tailor their investment strategy as they age to get exactly the right returns and the right benefits. And people kind of look at it and go, well, aren't you doing that in traditional finance too? And we are. But that is a compatibility layer. It is extremely expensive compared to the blockchain to run this on DTCC. We're going to do that because we think it's right. And we think it's the ability for investors to make that choice and then get comfortable with self custody. Once they see what self custody can do and how much more money they can make, they will move over to the blockchain. And we expect that to be a this summer kind of thing. I tease people that's the multiple IPO summer for me. I know the current number, but I can't tell you all those numbers just yet, but it's not small. And we're really excited about that. We think that once Wall Street understands that there is a technical capability, a platform that really can be compliant in the United States, create trustless markets. And, it's interesting. There's this debate about the word trustless that I want to stop for a second on. One of the biggest things about regulation in the United States is that most securities trading, in fact, lots of trading, requires an intermediary to make it work. And for the first time, authentically, the Chia blockchain makes it that you do not need an intermediary. The intermediary is the blockchain. It is your signature that limits and requires the other side to do only what you're asking and nothing more, nothing less. And by the way, also in reverse. Now, it mirrors very much the way you could use cash to buy a physical stock certificate, and that's kind of the world we're going to bring online. Look forward to one of my blog posts coming called Back to the Future. And the idea is that, you really can, and still today, walk in, and this is kind of since 1792, 1920, 1975, all these dates, you can do this. Today, you can do this. You can bring a bag full of cash and trade it for a security. And now that works. There are signature guarantees. If you've ever heard the word gold medallion, feel free to Google. But that is really notary. It is just proving that, yeah, okay, this is the person who says it is that's doing it, not, that we know anything about them or that it's legit or anything else. It's just, yeah, that's the signer. It's very much like buying or selling a used car, far closer than I think people would expect, where you like sign the title and then the new person takes it because you got the cash. But in the real world, that's still a pretty risky transaction. You have a large pile of money. What's going to happen with that other counterparty? But on the Chia blockchain, your money is safe and only atomically swaps. Offer files are an amazing innovation. So now that peer-to-peer, person-to-person transaction settles in 5 minutes with zero counterparty risk on either side. It is revolutionary. And going that direction means correctly sidestepping parts of regulation that are only there because there was a human intermediary. So we're really excited about what that means. We're excited about the fact that we have a project that couldn't exist without a well-built blockchain. And there are no other blockchains that have the entire scope and capabilities necessary to do what we're talking about doing for the Bermuda Trusts, for Wall Street in general. Someday, maybe Bitcoin could get there, but they are not there yet, and it's going to take quite a while. And then that's before you start talking about 10-minute block times and other things that really make this not as humanly usable as what the Chia blockchain offers. We also think that the Bermuda trusts are going to drive a lot of realization that there is a place for major financial institutions, large commercial banks, that is safe from a regulatory perspective. When we talk to big commercial banks who are serious about blockchain, they use private blockchains because they're worried their regulators will yell at them, that their regulators will push back on them using a public blockchain. And of course, not using a public blockchain is using a very bad database very badly. The entire point of public blockchains is that you have a 24/7 global market for what you're building. So this year, we are excited to watch this transition to go from very early revenue stages for Chia Network Inc. to scaled revenue in the back half of this year, the ability to prove the value of the blockchain. And as you may have seen a clip from Misha, the CFO of Both, talking about how every time we dig in to some interesting challenge, the traditional side is extremely painful and hard, and the blockchain is extremely easy and cheap. And I think that's just going to be a refrain you're going to keep hearing. It is also a transition from who the focus is on. To date, farmers have been more of a focus than necessarily all of the developer side. That is now moving towards developers and then further to things like hedge funds and family offices and insurance companies and corporations and banks. Now, that's going to be really profitable for farmers because the whole point here is that as our ongoing rewards continue to diminish to get to a certain final ongoing point, more and more the fees for blocks are what's going to matter. It's taking care of the banks and the financial institutions and making it so they can really hold their Apple dividend certificate for 20 years on the Chia blockchain and take in those payments and be safe, secure, and make more money than they ever could in any other way. So as that occurs, I think we really start to get back to two key things that I always want to focus on. One is, and I smiled when Celeste Time Lord said this, he went, "Oh, wait, the business white paper is a plan and not a vision." And it is. It was a question about what the timetables could look like. And in many ways, we've been excited to pull those timetables in. We don't kid when we say, I believe you're going to be able to buy coffee with Tesla stock. And we are obviously creating a huge piece of that right now. Now, there is more to do. There are layer twos. I also caution people that layer twos on Chia are going to look like no other layer two ever. Layer twos on Bitcoin are extremely limited by Bitcoin script. And the layer twos that have become popular on other blockchains are really single point of failure databases. They're not trustless payment channels, state channels like you're going to see on Chia. So delivering a world where many people don't necessarily know they're using a blockchain, but in fact, what they're doing is self-custodying more of their wealth. They're safer from the winds of change. I mean, Operation Choke Point 2.0 was a real thing. And people who were doing things that were completely legal but disfavored were getting pressure. But that brings me to the other thing that I always want to remind everyone, the real why. We in the West take a lot of things for granted. We take for granted that we could buy Microsoft stock. We take for granted that our bank is probably there, but don't bank at Credit Suisse, First Boston, Silicon Valley Bank, or First Republic Bank like I did. Outside of the United States, outside of Japan, outside of the EU, outside of the UK, these structures, these capabilities, the level of trust we have in these systems doesn't exist. And so even if you can buy Microsoft stock from a South American country, the brokerage fee you pay, the risk that your brokerage firm goes under and becomes a Ponzi are all much, much higher than what we deal with in the United States. And so taking these people out, making it a peer-to-peer transaction, go in, buy Broadcom stock from someone else on chain and know that you have it, that you will get those payments, that the only person you're trusting at all is the Bermuda Trust Administrator and Broadcom. It's not everybody else in that ecosystem. And as we scale that up, we start to really solve much more interesting problems, like making it easy for you to store your wealth for real, safely, safe from attacks, both physical and non-physical. This is the promise of strong self-custody, a well-built blockchain, and bringing the tools of finance and commerce onto chain. It's an exciting time. The great thing too is this year is an execution risk, not a market risk. It is very much we just have a lot of work to do and to get it done and get it launched. And we're excited. All signs point to these trading actively and strongly. Investors are more than intrigued by this new tool that's going to change how people invest on Wall Street. But I have one other thing. For far too long, you all have wanted merch from us. And so we have merch. Check out shop.chia.net. And for those of you, I believe is it 21 or ch21.chia.net? For those of you who received the Chia Cat discount for farmers, that service is available too for a 10% discount at the merch star. And that is chia21.chia.net. Pardon me, ch21.chia.net. I'll get it right.
Yeah, thank you, Gene, for that that overview of the state of the chain and the announcement for the merch. I know we see in the YouTube chat that some people have already started getting the stuff that they've been long waiting for and long asking for. So we're really excited to finally get that up to you guys, and it's looking really good. We've definitely been sampling the merch recently, and we are really proud of it. Next, we are going to do a very special, we've got a video that we're going to play for you guys. We asked a few of our community members to do some interviews with our leadership team here at Chia recently, and we put a video together for that, and we're gonna transition over to that. And then after that, we will come back and we'll do some Q&A with Gene to close it out. So let me get that queued up.
Hello, I'm Tim Youngman of the Monkey Zoo project that we're building on the Chia blockchain, and today we've got an interview with Vishal Kapoor. Nice to meet you, Vishal.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you so much for taking the time, Tim.
Like many of the Chia community, we probably don't know a great deal about you, so I've written down a few little notes here, and I'll just read them off now. So you started your career engaging in the discovery of the Higgs boson, developing big data and tiered data acquisition systems at the Superconducting Super Collider for the US Department of Energy.
Yeah, that certainly takes me back. The first very early lesson I learned when I joined the Super Collider, and for folks in the EU, this is the parallel effort to what happens in CERN in Geneva. I was asked to work on a particular aspect of data acquisition and switching. And so I went to my manager, I was 21 maybe or something, and I said, so what is the reference data that I can use, projects that have been done in the past, and so that I can use those to guide my thinking? And he just looked at me and he goes, yeah, son, this has never been done before. And I think that gives you a certain amount of freedom to say that you should learn from what's happened in the past, but you cannot be encumbered by it. So if you're always trying to improve what was done in the past, which is a good thing if you're doing it for yourself, but if you're working on projects, then you want to look at something that has a opportunity to be a big difference maker. And the one way to do that is to not completely focus on, an improvement from before. So the thing that drew me to the blockchain industry and Chia in particular was very similar. I was having a conversation with Gene. We just got into a conversation about Chia and the fact that it looked at what had been done before, but it said it can be done better. That and the fact that this was not a quick scheme, but something that would be a 5-10 year journey was something that drew me into it. And I remember telling Gene, it was the first time since working on the Higgs boson project that there was something where I didn't know how to solve fully. I knew that there was a certain amount that I could contribute, which could get it closer to being solved, and that it wasn't a quick journey. So I'd learn along the way.
It's kind of like why we decided to build on the Chia blockchain is because essentially Chia's got this kind of hindsight of seeing what's just happened and being able to process that and deliver something that's an improvement on what's already there. I think that's exciting. We were kind of promised this this world of permanence, provenance, royalties, and none of that was actually true until now. So I think some of the key features is just the way that Chia operates, and then again, going back to hindsight, having this ability to look back and say, well, this, and this wasn't actually true. Let's make it true.
Yes, Tim, you have faced this challenge yourself when you look at NFTs, because somebody steps back and goes, "Oh, NFTs, aren't those the things that are passe and nobody cares about?" And you go, "No, actually, what I'm talking about is this core capability to ensure that an artist can express themselves, that expression is one that the artist intended, so that the recipient of that art knows that what I'm receiving is the true and accurate manifestation of what the artist created." And something that doesn't get talked about a lot, people who create the art should participate in every future financial success of that art. So the royalty piece of it is something that I'm very passionate about.
I must admit, I completely agree with the analogy about NFTs, and if you mention that to the layman, they'll instantly point you towards a scam of some sort or this or that. A long-standing passion of mine was how do we convert gaming assets or a future metaverse asset that is your sort of persona. How do we claim that? How do we control that ourselves? And I think a lot of the problems I had when I was sort of conceptualizing this was that the technology wasn't there. It wasn't really there with Ethereum, and it wasn't quite there with other various blockchains. And I think the penny dropped as such at one point, and I thought, well, this is exactly how we do it. And it's great because we've gone on now to create kind of an add-on to the NFT sort of standard that Chia created, and we've created this fusion ability to enable sort of NFTs to be stored inside of other NFTs with singletons and coins. And I think I can see a clear path of how we can go from these static NFTs to these kind of dynamic NFTs that still retain all the provenance of the original NFT. So I'm very much down that path with you on that one. One of the tough things for us to do down in the trenches of the NFT world is to try and explain to these people that have been used to Ethereum for the last sort of 10 years or so is why this is maybe a better option.
I think given that we are in this fast-paced short form media world, right? I think there is still the onus of a subset of us to take the time to explain what the short form means. So I'll give you an example, right? We say digital assets. That's not what we mean. What we mean is this is a digital representation or a digital twin of an authenticated asset that is captured on the blockchain, right? But we don't. We just say digital assets, and you go, well, what does that mean, right? So I think that those of us who are committed to this project, not because of some corporate connection, but because of its ethos, I think we bear a certain amount of responsibility to continue to make sure that we refine our message so that it's better understood by the other party. Because, like I said, the onus is on us. I can't remember who said it. Maybe it was Oscar Wilde, right? That I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time, right? And so I think you have to take the time to get to that succinct and clear explanation.
I think everybody in the Chia ecosystem really appreciates what you guys at the Chia, the high end of Chia are doing. Chia Inc. themselves have got their own prerogatives and their own destiny, and we're kind of have the ability to build off the back of the things that you're building, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks very much.
And likewise, thank you so much for being a Chia enthusiast, for being genuine about it, and for taking the time with me today. Thank you.
Welcome everyone, I'm Yak, the person behind TPAT and Warbird Greenbridge. I'm joined here today by Bram, who needs no introduction. He's the current CTO of Chia Network, and he's been working on a lot of stuff lately. So Bram, why don't we start with a pretty simple question. What are the latest updates on the new plot format?
The latest updates on the new plot format are, we seem to be basically there. There's some lingering questions, not 100% there. It's sort of one of these, like, maybe next week we'll be there, maybe not entirely sure. At a high level, the kinds of attacks that were found have to do with hinting attacks of various types. And so Nick, who's one of the people, he came up with Dr. Plotter. He's one of the people who figured out these attacks. I've been working with him on the new proof of space format. We've come up with a construction that doesn't feel gimmicky. It feels like just solid, good ideas in there. There's some complicated trade-offs and a bunch of things you're optimizing for, right? Because you want it to be that plotting is cheap, farming is cheap. In particular, you want it to work on hard drives, which can do very few seeks. So that's a major limitation. And you want it to be very resistant to all manner of grinding attacks. And there's a lot of trade-offs that an attacker can use on the form of attack they want to do. So the idea is, as a general rule, you don't want people to be able to do extra compression beyond the intended compression. And so the number one way to make that better is to make it so that the intended compression has squeezed all the blood out of the stone. There is no blood left. We're using this very advanced technique called Binnish compression to do that. There's complicated things going on about trade-offs there. We think we have it basically worked out about how to make everything work super well. And then we'll get out a prototype as soon as we think we have that.
Thank you. It's definitely hard to plan how to change the rules of a blockchain while keeping the blockchain functional and secure.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about this one, right? If the method of stitching together the proofs of space and time were having problems, that would be really painful. The good thing about switching out proof of space is it's a black box, right? It doesn't really change the flow of everything. It's just changing this one part of it. It's difficult because it's so extremely algorithmically involved. It's kind of the main magic pixie dust of the whole blockchain is the proof of space algorithm itself. So that creates problems. But thankfully, in terms of integrating with the rest of the project, aside from having to be a hard fork, it's pretty straightforward.
Great explanation. I wanted to try and turn the page and ask something regarding gaming. How's it going?
Gaming. Gaming is going well. So okay, the story about gaming, the way it got started is we were having a discussion about how we were going to build a payment channel network. And one of the Core Lightning developers was like, you don't want to build a payment channel network. Building a payment channel network is horrible. It's awful. And it's awful for a reason that's stupid. The problem is that you need people to plop down real money and have real world business relationships for these routes, and that's not a technical problem, and it's real money getting put down, and that's your problem. And because it's not a technical problem, you can't just engineer your way out of it. And so I immediately was like, okay, cool, I'm going to build gaming. So here's my plan for how to get around that. My plan is we're going to do gaming. And the way we get around needing to prepay liquidity and everything is whenever you want to play against somebody else, there's one transaction to set up a session with them right at the beginning. And then you just play over that channel that you just created. And then at the end of the session, you close it down. So you have a little bit of delay at the beginning and end of a session here. And then you don't have all this need for prepaid liquidity everywhere. I spent roundabouts 2 years working on this, prototyping the code that runs on chain, making notes about how everything else works, getting experience with ChiaLisp, giving Art feedback about ChiaLisp, the language, writing ChiaLisp, and then whining to Art about how it didn't run because it used features of the language that I just made up and didn't exist, and he should add them to the language. So roundabouts a year ago, it seemed like it was time to actually start building something. My on-chain code has basically survived, and there's now roundabouts somewhere in the neighborhood of 100,000 lines of Rust code for the off-chain stuff. We got that working with our reference game, and then a few weeks ago we started putting in the second game and started a bit of a refactoring project on it to support that. So that's happening right now. For our initial release, a big goal of it is to make it so that adding more games is very easy, right? The whole idea is this whole platform of understanding state channels and the whole concept of how referees work and where slashing goes and blah, blah, blah. That's all very involved to understand. But once you have a few games implemented that you can reference and see what's going on there, and you just want to add more, it becomes very easy to understand what works within the medium and see how to go ahead and implement it. And that's going to be quite easy to add after our first thing. So that's actually going to be a good thing to point people to when they're like, hey, I want to do some, Chia blockchain programming. What should I start with? And a good piece of advice probably is going to be, hey, you should make a game, because that's something that's fun to do and doesn't require that you become super deeply steeped in how to do coin set programming. It just requires that you understand this tiny little slice of it that does things in a very particular way.
Thank you. I wanted to also briefly address the recent mempool issues.
Yeah.
So are there any learnings from this incident that CNI has learned, and have they influenced your vision for the future of the mempool or a future version?
Yes, the learnings are that you should treat mempool logic with the same kind of fear and respect that you treat consensus logic. There's a giant rabbit hole of how fancy you can get with fast forward type logic. What we have decided we're doing for now, having gotten pretty darn burnt with it, is we have this requirement that in order for something to be fast forwardable, all the transactions using it need to have the same puzzle hash and the same amount for a standard format singleton. Even getting that straight is enough of an issue that we are very leery of doing anything more. So right now, we feel committed to supporting that, and we're supporting exactly that, and we're going to wait for the dust to settle before even considering supporting anything more.
Yes, I would say that incident handling is a requirement, but it's great to see that you go above that and also have some learnings that you use going forward. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. I know that I personally enjoyed this a lot.
Hi, Gene. So thanks for taking some time to meet and answer some questions today. I'm Steve Stepp. I have been running the This Week in Chia website for the last 2 years. Just wanted to meet and have some questions for today, and kind of looking back at the last year So from March of 2024 until today. And Chia has submitted its third IPO draft, launched the cloud wallet beta, tokenized carbon credits, and announced recently single stock trust with Permuto Capital. What's your standout moment from the last 12 months, and what do you think defines where Chia is heading?
So actually, I hate to say it, but I do think it's actually when we figured out how to make Permuto Capital work. Trent kind of came to me and has always been bothered by the underlying kind of mispricing of dividends and blue chip stocks. But it was like there was no way to do that in the traditional world because it was going to be really expensive to administrate. And so, Trent kind of came and said, "Hey, look, we can probably do this in the blockchain because, of course, Chia has, such a unique technical infrastructure compared to other projects. It's not right to say that it's compliant. It's more right to say that it makes compliance easy."
So how does this fit in with the business model that you've spoken about before, like the Red Hat model for CNI specifically?
So look, one way you could think about Permuto is that Trent and I figured out how to create our own best customer. And because we did that, we might as well split the margin. What we expect to have happen is that all sorts of other TradFi people with really interesting ideas will now come to Chia directly and say, "Hey, I've got this great idea. I want you to help me build it." And that goes right back to the kind of Red Hat style model. But again, I think that this is, very much chapter one. I mean, I think it was Slowest Time Lord who said, "Wait, the business white paper isn't a vision, it's a plan." And yeah, it's a plan because, we still believe that things like identity and title around, things like provenance of goods, we think those are all real businesses that come on too. It's taken some time to get people comfortable that you really can use a public blockchain for high dollar, high value things. And it had to be a business case that was more than just, and we put it on a blockchain. And so that's one of the really kind of killer things is to show people that there are these applications that are big, that are, entire economy affecting, that absolutely benefit from being on a public blockchain.
So Chia over the last year has released probably 4 or 5 major upgrades to the software. How have these upgrades made the network stronger and more user-friendly for farmers and developers? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, so on the farmer side, I think most of what the farmers are going to see is we're going to put a lot of resources on the new plot format and the tools around it. And, you should expect some, movement on that very soon.
That's my next question.
Yeah, and I would say it this way: we're still generally on the schedule we talked about at the end of the year and early in the beginning of the year. So, no real changes to the macro schedule at all. If anything, I think what we're going to have as a first draft to really start talking about is pretty darn nice, maybe better than we thought it would be. So that's kind of a fun place to be. A lot of our work is going on behind the scenes for Cloud Wallet. So, a whole lot of stuff that would otherwise be seen, say, in the downloadable wallet, the reference wallet, you're not going to see until you see the Cloud Wallet mainnet release, which again is soon. You've seen the testnet release, so you've seen a bit of that. One of the things I'm really excited about from a developer's perspective is that we've kind of unified on the Chia Wallet SDK. So, this is a Rust kind of community/CNI project so that all of the things that make new primitives work easily all come out of the same library so that a wallet developer doesn't have to know the nitty gritty of how restricted cats for equities works. They just, use this library and know it's going to do the right thing with a cat, right?
Chia acquired Dr. Plotter back in May of 2024. For someone new to Chia, what does that mean for the average farmer, and how has it shaped the plotting process over the past year?
So I think it's worth going back in history a little bit. When we originally were building both proof of space and proof of time, we ran these decently well rewarded competitions. For whatever reason, proof of time struck a chord. And so we had these really in-depth VDF competitions for proof of time that really kind of picked all the low-hanging fruit about how you could speed up a VDF or how you might try to cheat a VDF. But proof of space was just mind-bending enough that we really didn't get a lot of people responding to those competitions. And so knowing the attack now, we were able to kind of go back to the original core research team with Dr. Plotter at that table and come up with mitigations that make that attack very, very hard. And so what we're excited about is we think we have now kind of that level of strength of resistance to attack on both sides of the kind of compute spectrum.
Yeah, I've just started getting back into plotting just to refresh myself so that when it comes, I'll be ready. So
nicely, it's going to be that you could have a very cheap GPU and you'll be able to get plots done in under a minute, maybe 2. It's a really nice thing now. It's for an eBay price, you'll be able to plot really fast. So
With the Cloud Wallet beta dropping in December, how has the community, especially farmers, reacted over the last few months, and what tweaks are you planning based on their input?
So there was definitely a lot of kind of core rough edges that we hadn't found that the beta community definitely found for us. So a lot of it's going to be seen in the UX and the UI. But the core things, I think once people actually got to touch Chia Signer, it really starts to make the vision of vaults and Chia Signer make sense. And so I'm really excited about the mainnet launch, which is soon, because we want to make sure that you have offers and probably NFTs, but NFTs will at least be a fast follow worst case, because vaults are just so much better from a human experience perspective. If you lose your phone, there's a real recovery path. That recovery path isn't high risk. If somebody tries to cheat and use your recovery path against you, you have easy ways to stop that. So, making that just easy and simple and using devices you already own, we're just really excited about what that means, about what you can put in, how hard it will be to hack, all these things that we're going to fully kind of, if you will, deliver on what I think is one of the core offers or core ideas for cryptocurrency, period. It's that you really could hold your entire wealth in a cryptocurrency wallet.
So Chia uses its own programming language of Chia Lisp. What's special about it, and how does it make the blockchain better for users or developers? For the curious, what do you feel is the best way for developers to get their feet wet in Chia Lisp?
So my experience, my statement is that very few folks need to be fluent in Chia Lisp. It's intentionally designed to be reused. It is the thing that developers really have to spend the most time on is understanding the coin model. How does the blockchain actually store things? What does it mean to be a smart coin?
I feel like you're, without directly saying it, you're sort of indirectly saying people might be better off seeking development in other programming languages for Chia versus learning Chia Lisp, like say Python or Rust or whatever.
Yeah, right now I would say learn Rust and go check out the Chia Wallet SDK and Sage, and you'll have a very good sense of how to build all these tools. And the idea behind the Wallet SDK is that when Bram comes up with a new primitive and hands it to our internal Chia List developers and maybe Yak, and it gets done, we're gonna put it in the Wallet SDK so that you as a developer can go, oh, I want to create an American option. Well, I don't want you to have to write the Chia Lisp to create the American option. I want you to be able to make a call in Rust to create, American option.
For someone who's never touched cryptocurrency but is curious about Chia, what's the one thing you would tell them to get them excited about jumping in?
I mean, it's the future of finance. The thing we're about to go do, and I will pause and say, if we do it right, a lot of people are going to use the Chia blockchain and won't really know they're using the Chia blockchain. If you're playing peer-to-peer poker, the Chia blockchain part is nice to know about maybe, but what you really want to do is have a trusted way to play anybody on the globe right now and for money and have it just work. And I mean, this goes to one of our core beliefs, which is blockchains are going to change finance, but they're going to be driven by applications and products that are better on a blockchain than they are in the real world. Bermuda, a great example of that, the CAD Trust from the World Bank, you can't do it without a public blockchain. You can't create a global Edgar from people who don't trust each other. That's Edgar, like the SEC Edgar for stocks. So, it's those kinds of things that are going to drive people to the Chia blockchain to use it because they want to play a game, or they want to trade an asset certificate, or they want to buy options on equities, right? Those are now things that we're going to put in everybody's hands, and some of them as simple as going to the App Store on the web.
I'm Andrew Davidson. I've been involved with Chia since before mainnet.
I'm Thomas Chow. I'm the Chief Legal Officer here at Chia Network, also the Chief Legal Officer of Bermuda Capital.
My background is in traditional finance IT, and some of my friends started one of the first digital asset exchanges in Hong Kong. After a while, they invited me to come and join them working on that. And so I was working for a digital asset brokerage, and this was in the middle of the ICO mania, the ICO mania. As part of that, we kept getting these pitches and white papers. Had to really look at those in detail as to are they just nonsense? That's how I first heard about Chia, and not because they were pitching it to us or anything, but just I was looking at various tokens and things, and Chia, because of Bram, Inventor of BitTorrent, came onto my radar. So if anything, I went into it sort of saying, oh, well, this is likely a bit of a scam. But then I kept digging deeper and deeper into the technical side, and everything I read made sense. And then I could easily see that, it was very much based on all the strong points of Bitcoin, but solved some of the key problems with it. And the deeper I dug, the more it made sense.
Very much similar story, I think, to you, Andrew. I got a call from Gene 4 years ago. Gene and I worked together in DC about a decade ago. And he told me that he was working at a blockchain crypto company. And I said, ha, 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 no. Because I'd watched kind of the ICO-mania that you talked about. You see the world a little bit differently because you've been in the traditional finance IT world where you see like what happens when things go wrong. Like,
yes.
It's not just, oh, we had an outage. It's, hey, a lot of people lost a lot of money. I don't have the traditional finance background, but I do have a little bit more of corporate securities and capital markets background. Like it or not, I know I get a lot of hate for saying this, but I've generally respected the SEC. Compliance matters, and I just don't think people believe that, unfortunately.
If you're going to recommend that somebody makes a lifelong investment, their retirement savings, into something, it cannot be something that can literally be accidentally lost or regulatory frozen or stolen overnight. And so that's where Chia is looking at being compliant from the get-go, designed to be compliant, so it's not going to get regulatory frozen. It's spent an awful lot of time when other people have been doing pump and dumps in improving custody with remedies like clawbacks and time locks and vaults to make sure that those funds are safe and anything built on top of Chia is safe. That makes it investable. And that's where, from a traditional finance background, I look at this stuff and say, look, almost nothing in crypto, maybe except for Bitcoin, is investable, but Chia is, because it's built on these strong foundations.
A lot of what we designed in Chia is really just a blast from the past. We've done stuff that's innovative in the industry, but what looks innovative in the industry is actually not that innovative when you think about how systems were designed in the first place. How ownership is allocated in our chain, which is on the coin model. And like Bitcoin is, UTXO. So you have asset, key, asset, key, asset, key. And so you can actually establish clear control ownership structures as opposed to an account model, which is just smart contracts that list loads of accounts and loads of assets associated with them that flip every time the computer state gets updated. And I'm like, okay, that looks more like a bank account now, but ultimately, like, just asset key, like that's the simplest way ever to record ownership and whether someone has control of an asset or not.
What I see from a compliance point of view of Chia is it's I mean, the first block was standing on the shoulder of giants or something like that. I see that was obviously a homage to Bitcoin, but also the rest of the industry, the finance industry as well. I think there's some really smart stuff in traditional finance. There's some really smart people who worked on it, and really smart people who've designed it. And also there's an accumulation of lessons learned over decades and centuries, which has led to these structures that work. And so then when you have Chia come along and with people who understand those things, but also, again, some of the smartest people on the planet understand what's the problems with those. This is the reason why banks are so rich, is because they stick their hand out and take a tiny bit of all these flows coming through that. And that's why you have the marble entrances and the huge buildings of the finance, because they're in the middle taking their cut of every single thing that every single person does on the planet with finance, including buying their coffee. And so blockchains in general, and Chia specifically, has an opportunity to get rid of some of those middlemen and do it more efficiently. But you don't do that by throwing away things that work. You do it by learning from things that work, understanding things that work, and making them better. And this is what I see Chia has done.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the industry is coming to understand a little bit more of some of this. ETH Denver last year, there were a bunch of booths at ETH Denver, And so you go to this booth, you end up talking to a founder and the team, and the founder and team are saying, oh, we're building a data encryption platform using homomorphic encryption. And this is what our goal is. It's to sell this data platform to enterprises. And the follow-up question was, when do you think you're going to be able to handle, maybe a petabyte of data, or at least a few terabytes that we could send over to you and you could store like that? Founding team looks at that person and goes, we'll probably never get there at scale. It's like, okay, well, this is what enterprises want. You said you're going to be targeting enterprises. Wait, what are you building then right now? And then the person basically kind of sheepishly admits, well, actually, we've been focused a lot more on our token generation event and just trying to get our token launched, because that's what our founders and investors want. Our investors really want. And after that, we'll start working on the platform. And I think that's like, to me, that's like an encapsulation of how the industry works and kind of the incentives. And I think other people are starting to notice that, because Vitalik was speaking at Stanford this week. Someone asked him about gaming, like about crypto and blockchain gaming. He had a very tepid response to that and said, the problem that I see with crypto gaming is that people put crypto first and gaming second. And so you build a system, an entire system around tokens and tokenomics and what people are going to earn as a reward for playing a game. And then you put like basically a mediocre, kind of neutral-ish game, you slap it on and you try to have fun. But he's saying, look, the point of a game is to try to have fun. And so like, actually, you should be spending all your time doing development of a game that people really want to play. And then the crypto is the ancillary part. This is Vitalik even calling out the industry generally, like the incentives are perverse. And I think that's generally true, is that the incentives are perverse so that very few people want to actually build the right way and want to build sustainable businesses.
And this, people forget that Chia started in 2017, and it took 4 years of hard stuff before they created something and launched on mainnet. And because they were tackling the fundamental problems early, the consensus, the decentralization, the security, and then looking for the use cases, which then you've got the World Bank, and now you've got Bermuda Capital putting stock certificates on chain. And so this is why Chia is different, but I also think it is what is going to sustain and solving real problems for real people. Well, thank you very much, Thomas. It's been great chatting with you. Best of luck with everything that's going on. I'm a huge supporter. I think doing things the right way, as Chia has been done since the beginning, is going to pay dividends, and really proud to be part of this community, and best of luck with everything.
So Bermuda Capital is a company that we designed to reinvent the way that investors think about yield and think about investing, and really the way that we're doing that and allowing investors across the world to choose whether or not they want access to dividends, whether or not they want access to the assets of underlying companies. And we're trying to reinvent the way that you look at yield inside of the public markets. To do that, we originally started to look at the Chia blockchain and at blockchains in general, because there's a lot of things that are really difficult inside of the financial services sector, which sit at the administrative level or the operational level. And we saw blockchain as a way to really solve these really existing issues that have always been present. And when looking at that, we needed a compliance solution. We needed a way for there to be an ability on the blockchain to trade in a peer-to-peer fashion that is truly peer-to-peer with no intermediaries. And these tools, they don't exist on every blockchain, but they do exist with Chia, which actually allows us to cut the traditional costs that we experience quite significantly. And we're actually able to then do things that don't really exist in financial services sector today. We felt very strongly that we wanted to build and allow this to exist on an L1 because traditionally that's where the vast majority of nodes are. That's where the vast majority of people come together to help the open source solution. So that's really how we came to really appreciate what the Chia Network Inc. team had built. And it's really helped us get to market in what we deem to be a much quicker way, and also in a much more compliant and likely secure way as well. So we believe that the rails that Chia has created and Chia Network has created with the Chia blockchain really allows us to unlock the next generation of finance. And we think that the engine room of that will be on the blockchain.
All right. Well, I just wanted to thank our community members who took the time to speak with our leadership team for that. It was very interesting conversations. I mean, it was each interview was an hour long. So we have a lot of conversation to go through, and we'll be hopefully releasing some of that additionally as well in the future. But I just want to thank again the community members for taking the time to do that. We're going to move on to some Q&A. Next, let's see. And first question that I have for you, Gene, surrounds the topic of IPOs. You mentioned that this is your summer of IPOs. And we have a few questions surrounding that. One is, how does the launch of the trust certificates with Bermuda Capital strengthen Chia Network's position with the SEC and a potential IPO? Oh, you are muted.
Thank you. It kind of works the other direction in the sense that the Bermuda Capital Trusts, we had a lot of confidence that the SEC was going to be receptive from the Chia Network IPO filings that had gone on from 2023 till late last year. Now, that said, the Bermuda Capital Trusts and that use case, that is the final real answer to the question we've always gotten of, okay, but what's that real use case that everybody goes, okay, yeah, that isn't doable anywhere but a blockchain, and that's a material thing, and blockchains are no longer going to be only casinos and bad pump and dumps. And so it's critical to being able to then go out to the investing public with Chia Network stock. And from a timing perspective, the way we look at it is that we're going to have a handful of Bermuda Trust companies that will be offering this summer. We're doing it all at once. We've talked about 3 of them. You should expect a few more that will be in that pile, primarily because we didn't really want to go talk to an investor and have them be like, but I don't like Microsoft. I love the idea. So we wanted to make sure there was a kind of basket of things that made sense for our initial rollout. Once the Bermuda Trusts are trading on the public markets and on Chia, we don't expect it to take very long for the Chia Network IPO to be able to follow on its footsteps. One of the things I'm excited about Bermuda is that the Bermuda Trusts are pretty market agnostic. Even if we were having a down market, unless it's like a 2008 style market, in fact, having a kind of closed IPO window could be good for the Bermuda Trusts, because you're not investing in the Bermuda Trust. You're investing in Microsoft or Broadcom or Apple in a new way you couldn't do before. And that's those financial professionals' jobs to do all day, every day. So we're very excited about that. And then, we're going to kind of love the cycle of first Trent and I go and explain the Bermuda Trusts to, all the active financial institutions in Europe, America, and Asia. And then we're going to send the Chia Network sales team back for the people who chose the DTC rails instead of the Chia blockchain to really start the process of getting them comfortable that self-custody is more valuable and safer for them. And then I hope to come back again pretty promptly thereafter and say, hey, would you like to invest in the future of Chia Network Inc.? And I think that's going to be a very receptive crowd that has already seen us twice.
Now, there are some people that are certain that the SEC will end up classifying XCH as a security despite comment letters. What's your confidence that the SEC will not bring enforcement action?
So anyone saying that doesn't understand how the pre-IPO process works. So if you look at our comment letters from the SEC, which were disclosed by a FOIA on the SEC website right now, you will see that they had comments about and questions about, are your sales of XCH securities? And we answered those questions. And the response we got was crickets. And in fact, the next question was, hey, could you change the chart about how you're describing the XCH sales a little? You cannot be the regulator responsible for keeping a filing accurate and legally sound and not say it's a Section 5 violation instead of change the table. So folks don't understand that the lack of following up responses on that meant that the SEC was comfortable that we were not a security in the types of securities, the types of XCH sales we did. And it's really important to understand what was going on. When we got our comment letters, it was often that in the afternoon on a Thursday, the Ethereum ETF was approved and that thing hit my email in the same exact minute. So the entire crypto task force from the previous regime was all over our filings as much as they were all over the ETH ETF and earlier the Bitcoin ETF as well. So there's absolutely no way that you can infer anything but the SEC is comfortable that what we're doing, as we are doing it and as described in our S1, is not a security. And XCH has been a commodity since inception. And it's important to point out, if you really look closely, the big surprise for us, and I've hinted at this before, but it's now very clear, is that the 2019 guidance was real and that the SEC, even under the Biden administration, was taking it seriously. You can see that their questions go that direction, our answers go that direction, and the fact that we had not sold for nearly 3 years after the blockchain was sufficiently decentralized at mainnet, fully functional, really goes to that. So anyway, point being, and I mean, the real kicker is like we got the Microsoft cert trust response in like a week early. And as you can tell from the Microsoft amended filing, it was pretty light. I'll just say that our ongoing conversations are not about whether the Chia is a security and are all about like details of how the Bermuda trusts are going to work. So we're really excited about that. All signs that we've gotten from a very friendly SEC. And by the way, the SEC is more friendly than it already was when we were positively and proactively working with it last year. So anyway, long story short, there's no way you can possibly infer that the SEC thinks that XCH sales are securities.
Yes. I have a couple of more technical questions for you. What level of Nakamoto coefficient will Chia be happy with as it's reduced massively over the years, is what this question says.
Yeah, so this was very much due to the plotting attacks that we were talking about, and you heard about a little earlier in this broadcast. We think that once the new plot format is released and the kind of upgrade process goes through, that by kind of the end of 2026, we expect Nakamoto coefficient to be more like 100 than it is like in the 5, 6, 7 range that it's currently kind of sitting at. Now, even at the 5, 6, 7 range, and it's only down to 5 because not everybody's upgraded to the mempool issue that we kind of discussed earlier. It's still like 2 or 3 times the next competitor. I mean, unfortunately, if you dig in, Bitcoin's Nakamoto coefficient is probably 1, and that's Bitmain, but arguably 2 or 3. And one of the things I'd really point out to people is in the Chia Networks S1, we have a really great blockchain 101, and it goes deeply into some of these issues. Really recommend taking a look at that. If you think a lot, it's a really good way to get your normie friends to really understand blockchains and what these issues look like.
There's a question about a Bitcoin core dev recently introduced Bitcoin Lisp based on Chia Lisp. Was Bram or others involved in that? Will Bitcoin soon be able to do what Chia does?
So I would say that, Bram is involved in that. I mean, not in the sense of like, rallying behind the scenes, but more, making sure that all of the data and information was available. And look, we think that going in our direction makes a ton of sense for Bitcoin. Anthony Towns is a person doing Bitcoin Lisp, and he's calling it, I think, Bullish or Bull something. Anyway, had a video going around X today, in fact. And we're excited about that. Ultimately, we think it's good to make Bitcoin better. We think self-custody in Bitcoin could be massively improved. One of the things I'm really excited about the launch of Cloud Wallet is the ability for the parts of Bitcoin Core who do want to progress to be able to demonstrate to people what they're missing by not having things like covenants and vaults and other things. Bitcoin can get a lot more closer to what Chia Lisp can do, but Bram being Bram did the genius thing and made the coin model simpler than the UTXO model. And it lets you do some things you just can't really ever do in Bitcoin without really serious upgrades. And that's before you, again, get back to the like 10-minute block times are not fun. All the kind of other things that have to change to get Bitcoin there. But there's no reason that Bitcoin shouldn't, follow along. I mean, I would love it if someday we got to a, write once and debug twice because there's slight differences, but things just run on Chia and on Bitcoin.
This is a question. I think it was answered by another member in the YouTube chat, but for anyone who maybe didn't see it, one question from YouTube was, do we need to replot at some point? And I think this was in reference to during the video, Bram was talking about the new plot format.
Yeah, we will unfortunately absolutely have to replot, but it's just as we said before mainnet launch that at some point there would be a replot from, say, even K32. 2 points about that, though. Point one is that we're going to have a probably like year or 6 months, and that's going to be kind of open to debate in the community, but that's the window of look, where both plots are going to work, but in first, the new plot format will be disfavored. And then slowly but surely through that period, by the time you kind of get the middle of it, they're equal. And by the time you get to the end, old plots are disfavored. And that lets you have, a good wide window to do that replotting in. Also, as I mentioned earlier, plotting is going to be really much easier than it ever was. It turns out that we can get really, really quick, even on kind of old hardware, and still be secure. And that leads to the second point, which is we think that the endurance of this new plot format is going to be much higher. We actually think there's a pretty easy decade before we have to even touch it. And it might be longer. So, that's been one of the fun design pieces, is that I think we can get both much smaller case sizes, so things that you couldn't do in the past, like farming on a phone, quite possible. So anyway, very exciting. Is a replot. We've always expected one, but I think it's going to be pretty manageable, and I think we're going to invest some in making those tools make it very easy for you to replot.
Yeah, it helps that the new plotting is faster.
Yeah,
It's going to
exactly.
be not as much of a lift. There's a question about security in general. Have attacks from the likes of North Korea increased on the chain, and is it easy to see these attempts?
So since the attacks that we were suspicious of, most of the on-chain items have actually been bugs and have not been malicious. The flip side, though, is I will tell you that Chia Networks Inc. is constantly under attack from North Korea, including like the things you hear about people trying to fake resumes and get hired. Like, it has not relented in any way, but they are attempting to attack the people and not the chain right now. I take that as a positive sign.
This would be maybe a good time to note to people that you have been impersonated a few times on various social media platforms. We have seen some fake Discord Hoffman G's as well. So be very careful and make sure you know who you're talking to.
Yeah, and I'd add on Discord, I don't have any friends, or have very, very limited friends, because I don't want you to think that I'm going to friend you, not because I wouldn't be willing to friend you.
Yeah. I have a couple of fun ones for you. This guest or attendee says, I plan to attend the London event. Who will be there, and will Gene be wearing his two-tone shoes?
Odds are the two-tone shoes will be coming with me, yes. But it's basically going to be myself, and then I think, you could think about the UK and Northern European folks who aren't going to be at Berlin as, from communities who you're going to see there. This will be like our third or fourth London event, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah, if this is the first time you're hearing about this upcoming event, you can find more information on our Discord. The XH London guys are the appointment for that. And you can get links to the sign-up page there as well. Let's see. Here's another fun one. If Satoshi Nakamoto suddenly reappeared and said, hey, I love Chia, what's the first thing that you'd ask them?
I'd ask him to help me convince Bitcoin Core people to actually adopt like self-custody and all the stuff that they should be doing. I think, if you really think about what Satoshi was trying to build, I think the ossification wasn't what he was looking for.
Right, I'm taking a look and seeing if there's any new ones that came through that would be good to answer. What does the revenue share model look like between Permuto Capital and CNI?
Yeah, so it's basically, and caveat, minor details will be slightly different, but it's basically a 50-50 split. We do expect, I believe, to recognize all of the Permuto revenue, but then take a charge for half of, if you will, the income. So, we kind of get half of the profit, if that makes any sense. But, that's one of the reasons we're very comfortable that adds material revenue to the, Chia Networks IPO and the Chia Networks S1. That and this use case was kind of the last major item gating our ability to go. As I said, Permuto can go almost no matter what. And I think the fact of the success of the Permuto trust means that we can, as Chia, go in even what would otherwise be kind of bad IPO markets for tech. But at the same time, especially with new revenue and cash flow ending our need to sell XCH, for example, a month or two here or there is going to be, a real option for us in the summer and fall about when we'd want to do this. But it really sets everything up. There's a little bit of time because obviously, if you've seen the current S1A on the SEC website, we're gonna have to do one more amendment to really put Permuto and its revenue into the Chia S1, and that'll take a month. But we're really excited because it really is that Permuto paves the way for both the revenue model and for the Chia Networks IPO itself.
I know that you are a great lover of memes. This community member wants to know how they're doing, how the community in general is doing on the memes.
I'm going to give it an A-. I think there's still some room
Okay.
for improvement, but the
Nice.
Tan Gang's pushing and I like it.
Awesome. Well, looks like that's probably all the time that we have for questions. I want to thank Eugene for joining me on this the celebration stream, and I want to thank all of the community members who are here and who are asking questions and are just in the community in general. We wouldn't be this far without you guys, and we really appreciate everything that you guys are doing, and we look forward to the next year of development.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Have a good one.